Yok, o babayı.
Kentle ilgili.
Şehirlerin nasıl yapılaştığını, trafiğin nasıl aktığını, sadece burada değil, yani fiziksel olarak değil, şey üzerinde de, ekran üzerinde de bunu gösterebiliyor. Ve şurada çok güzel bir şey var, map'i var. Orada mesela, ben şöyle geçeyim. Burada buna circular map diyorlar ve burada birçok şey var. Mesela İstanbul için düşünelim bunu. İstanbul'un güvenlik kodu, güvenlik notu, kültür notu, eğitim durumu, var olan parkları, birçok şeyleri ve böyle bir şey oluşturuyor, bir map oluşturuyor ve ülkeler arasında kıyaslama yapmak veya ülkelerin zaman içerisindeki durumlarını kıyaslamak adına böyle farklı şeyler kullanıp map'ler kullanıp anlamaya çalışıyor. Bu yaptığı çalışma da yanlış hatırlamıyorsam Brezilya'daki çalışmalardan biriydi. Brezilya, Hindistan, daha çok popülasyonun çok olduğu ve trafiğin çok yoğun olduğu şehirlerde yapıyor bu çalışmayı. Aynı zamanda da interaktif, mesela bunu Japonya için yaptı yanlış hatırlamıyorsam. İnteraktif bir şekilde binaların isimlerini değiştirip, tarzlarını değiştirip, içerisinde kaç tane insan yaşayabileceği, kaç tane şirket kurabileceğini efektif, verimli bir şekilde göstermeye çalışıyor. Yani var olan yeni bir yerleşim yerini, mesela yeni bir yerleşim yeri yapmak istiyorsanız, o yeni yerleşimlerinde altyapı, üst yapı ve kültürel aktiviteler hangi sayıyı kaldıracak? Kimlerden yardım alabiliriz? Nasıl başka şehirlerle nasıl iletişim halinde olabilir gibi farklı teoremleri var bu hocanın. Oldukça keyifli bir durumu var. Aynı zamanda orada gördüğünüz gibi böyle değişik böyle yeni bisiklet sistemleri, insansız kullanabilen bisiklet sistemleri gibi çalışmalar yapıyor kendisi. Başka, burada da yine sadece şey değil, ülkeler değil, mesela Kendal'ın yerini yapıyor. Kendal'a 2 tane yepyeni öğrencilerin kalabilmesi için yeni yurtlar yapıldı.
Otelin olduğu yer.
Evet, sizin olduğunuz otelin olduğu yerler, yurtlar yapıldı. Mesela o yurtların kapasitesi ne olmalı? Kanalizasyonlarının altyapısı, yani oranı nasıl olmalı? Kaç tane öğrenci yapabiliriz? Veya carbon emission. Mesela bugün görüşeceğimiz Bilge Yıldız Hoca, nükleer enerji bölümünde çalışan hocanın da ilgilendiği konulardan biri. Karbondioksit emilimi ne kadar olmalı? Kaç kişi bu emilimi sağlayabiliyor ve yüzde ne kadar bu popülasyonu düşürürsek optimum noktaya gelebiliriz gibi çeşitli çalışmaları mevcut. Evet,
sadece yeni yani şimdi değil. Yani mesela İstanbul'da
olduğu yerlerde genelde çalışmalar yapıyor. İşte Brezilya, New Delhi gibi metropoller. Aynı zamanda İstanbul'da da çalışmaya başlamış bir ara Kent Bey. Ama sonra sanırım ilişkileri kopmuş. Ama yine yeni şeyler yapmayı çok umut eden, gerçekten alanında çok düzgün çalışan, yenilikçi bir insan kendisi.
Aslında siz belediye başkanlarınızı alıp buraya getirseniz
veya hocayı davet etmek lazım.
O da olabilir.
Ama hocanın şimdi İstanbul'u biliyor.
Bir de Adana'ya
Ankara'sı
gitmiş.
var. İşte Adana'yı kısmen biliyor. Evet, İzmir var yine.
Aslında güzel bir Türkiye turu gerçekten çok güzel olur. Hem oraları tekrar görmesi açısından hem de çalışmayan noktaları göstermesi açısından.
Hocayı davet etmek lazım yani Türkiye'ye.
Bugün size güzel suggestion öneriler listemizde o da var.
Öyle mi?
Pilot program. Yani Türk hocaları tabii getirmek çok önemli, çok değerli. Ama aynı zamanda bizim gibi düşünmeyen ve bizim doğduğumuz topraklarda doğmamış, büyümemiş insanların perspektifini, bakış açısını almak çok değerli. Çünkü biz nasıl onların ülkesinde onların görmediği noktaları görüyorsak, Onlar da bizim ülkemizde bizim görmediğimiz noktaları görüyorlar. Bazı alanlarda pilot program oluşturup bu kilit hocaları davet edip onlarla birlikte çalışmalar yapmak bence çok etkili olur.
Evet.
Hem de Türkiye'ye yeni bir hava getirir diye düşünüyorum.
Anladığımız kadarıyla Kemal Bey'in öyle bir niyeti var gibi görünüyor.
Var.
Evet. O görüşmelerde bunlar da konuşulacak herhalde.
Konuşulacak, evet. Evet.
Ben işte son 5 senedir computational biology okuyorum. O bilgisayar mühendislik ve biyolojinin karışımı. Orada ben daha çok genetik ve kanser üzerinde çalışıyordum. Orada bayağı bir projeler çıktı. Onu da halen devam ediyorum. Ama şimdi Canan Hoca'nın labinde çalışıyorum. Orada işte daha çok ultrasonun bilgisayar tarafında çalışıyorum. Bir taraftan işte bu ultrasonu nasıl fetal monitoring yani ve meme kanser ve vücudun daha farklı taraflarını nasıl specify edebileceğimizi onun bilgisayar tarafında çalışıyorum. Bayağı güzel her şeyi öğrenme ihtimalim oldu. Bir software tarafı, bir hardware tarafı.
Yazılım.
Aynen, bayağı pozitif bir environment'e girdim. Çok memnun oldum herkes ve çalışma ihtimalim olduğu için. Evet, burada işte in the future, I'm hoping to work more in computational bioinformatics and just integrating data science and biology to build the future of healthcare and medicine.
Biyoloji bilimi arasındaki entegrasyon üzerinde çalışmak istiyorum.
Yeni bir hoca yetişiyor.
Tebrikler.
Benden çok daha iyi bir hoca diyorum.
Ama çok iyi rol modelim. Gerçekten çok şanslı hissediyorum kendimi. Canan hocam çok böyle welcoming oldu.
Hi Kent. Hey, we have been waiting for you. Please.
Wow, I didn't realize you had such a big group.
I know, yeah, I was also not sure. Kent, this is Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu,
Hi.
the chairman of the party,
Pleasure to meet you.
and the rest of the journalists and his team members.
Wow.
And I try to give some brief intro about your group, but you do the best, so
Okay.
I'll just leave you.
Sure.
And they know that you have been to Turkey, Istanbul, Adana, so I talk about those visits, and they have been also very much interested to learn about the new concepts and principles of the science that you do in the suburb and the cities and traffic control and so on.
Okay.
So I
Sure.
think they're so excited to meet you.
Yeah, well, this is great. Let me
Gerçekten
stand right here, yeah.
He asks if it is really possible to solve the traffic problem in Turkey, in Istanbul.
That's a great question. I would say it's impossible without changing the zoning regulations and settlement patterns, and particularly housing policy. We're a big advocate of what we call live-work symmetry, which is developing high-performance communities where the housing is in sync with the jobs and people have walkable access to all of the amenities they need in daily life. So you can't solve the traffic problem with better roadways or smart city technology. You can solve it by eliminating the need for commuting.
Trafik bizde İstanbul'da kanser gibi.
He says it's like a cancer in
Kentin
Turkey.
sağlıklı
It is a
bir
cancer,
haritası
yeah.
yok. Evet,
No,
kentin
it's a-
sağlıklı bir planı da yok zaten.
There is
Yeah.
no healthy plan of the city right
Yeah,
now.
so it's like a cancer everywhere.
Evet,
It's a
her
problem.
yerde kanser gibi çok
But there's,
yüksek bir problem.
We've been talking about these ideas for 15 years, but there's a new movement that's popular with many mayors, led by Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo, that refers to the 15-minute city, which is really kind of a simplified version of what we're talking about, which is to say that the city becomes a network of more livable, resilient, high performance, whatever adjectives you want to use, neighborhoods. So rather than the central city and the suburbs and things go like this, you have a series of neighborhoods which are largely autonomous functionally. Then if you do this, you see this here, this is an example of what we're building as an alternative to private automobiles. So if people live near where they work and they have access to the amenities they need nearby, then we can provide mobility service in addition to walking with lightweight vehicles like this. So this is an autonomous vehicle that you call for it on your phone like an Uber, comes to you wherever you are, then you can ride it to your destination, and it can be under human power, or if you're elderly or disabled, it can be autonomous. You get off at your destination and it goes to pick other people. In the back is a locked box, so it can also deliver packages the same way, like takeout food. So for example, it could pick up Chinese takeout and then pick up a human, drop the human off, and then deliver the package.
Or maybe you'll just take a Turkish Adana kebab.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think they are really curious about your past experience in Istanbul and Adana, so that we can learn what worked, what didn't work, and use it as a lesson, and
Right.
we can do it better next time when you come to Turkey.
Okay. Well, I think that, I mean, I love Istanbul. Istanbul is great. Adana, I had some of the best food I've ever had. But I think, you know, Istanbul, like many great cities, they have historic areas and business districts and suburbs, and that tries to connect everything with roadways and, you know, mass transit in a few corridors. And I think that pattern is last century's pattern. I think we need to move towards 21st century patterns. I mean, so many things are changing. The way we're doing work is changing. Work is becoming hybrid. I think the central business district and the conventional office building is obsolete. Work is becoming kind of a network. People work at home, they work in the office, they work in a cafe or a hotel lobby or an airport lounge, and the role of the home is changing. The home is becoming a center of work, but of learning, of healthcare, of exercise, of entertainment, communication. And cities are not acknowledging in a fundamental way this transformation which will change these patterns significantly. Then at the same time we have all of this new technology. So this kind of sensing and automation, robotics, you know, can be applied to improve the quality of life of people. So the combination of these fundamental changing patterns of living and working, plus the possibilities of new technology, creates a whole new opportunity for cities to become much more efficient, but that's not really the word, much more livable, and also much more entrepreneurial, you know, supporting the way jobs are changing and moving towards a much more entrepreneurial society. So these kinds of models here, these are called Cityscope. And we can interactively look at all of the interventions that can improve communities. This is Kendall Square over here where we are.
Sizin bizim
And so we can look at changes in density, the patterns of living and working, new mobility systems, new energy systems,
enerji sistemlerine bakın.
model public health, model the entrepreneurship, the innovation potential of a community. So, so we do two things in our group. We prototype these systems like this. We have housing systems that can be deployed in the city, and then we develop the models with the simulation tools to simulate the impact of those interventions.
Aktarıyoruz ve bunların nasıl uygulandığını gözlemliyoruz.
So what can change in Istanbul?
İstanbul'da neyi değiştirebiliriz?
Oh well, I think I'd start with the land use regulations. You know, I would start with well, for example, one thing that we're excited about is using very powerful technology for governance, for public policy. For example, rather than having a fixed master plan with fixed zoning, you could create incentives for the landowner. They can build a bigger building if they develop in a pro-social way. Okay, so you could have a 10-story building. Well, if you want to develop under the old model, that's fine, but don't ask for a variance. But you could increase that floor area for a developer, but a percentage of that increased land value needs to go back to the community. So cities control indirectly, literally trillions of dollars worth of assets through their land use regulations. And then you can have very fine-grained mappings of incentives to public assets, and it can all be put on the blockchain and smart contracts. It can be self-regulating. You can have data feeds, so you get a little bit too much of this asset, you dial down the incentives, you dial this up, and so you can achieve in a human community something like a natural ecosystem with feedback mechanisms, you know. And I think, in my mind, that is by far the most exciting application of technology. Not the sensors and the gadgets that are in the city, but using it for creative public policy to create better communities.
The keywords have changed in this field in terms of, instead of using efficiency, you said livable. Are there any keywords that policymakers should seek out in designing? Smart. And what's
smart.
the content? Don't use it.
Yeah,
So
smart is really traditionally smart cities is about optimization. That's like optimizing the flow of traffic through smart traffic signals and the like. And that has not proven to be very useful. It hasn't been proven to be smart. Right. I think we have to deal with much, and it's also just become a marketing term by companies. So I think that we should think about the fundamentals.
So you said pro-social.
Pro-social,
So
yeah.
social justice, livable.
Equity.
I'm curious. Okay,
Equity
so
is huge. What's happening in cities like this, Kendall Square, where we are, the people who are the lifeblood of this area, which are the young professionals, the young people with young children, the retired people, the retired faculty that can mentor the young people. No, they can't afford to live in this area. You know, if housing is built, it's luxury housing for just the thin slice. Yeah, handicapped. So I think we need to have much more equitable policies, not only for the housing but for the schools, for the shopping. You know, realize there's no pharmacy in this whole area here. There's no daycare center beyond what MIT has, or dozens of other assets that people need in daily life. That's what I mean by pro-social. If you can create incentives for the property owners and the developers to build out that infrastructure, tap into market forces. I think what is no longer viable in most cities is to build social housing for the government to pay for it. I think you need to have these public-private partnerships, but the government can set the rules of the game and create the incentives, so then the market will do what is needed for people.
And Kent, when we came here before you arrived, the first question that I asked, because I admire your work and they know, they search about you, and they were asking, would it be possible for Kent to come to Turkey and we can have him to a couple of cities and start some work around what you do and create a new hype in Turkish cities?
Well, so let me, yes, the answer. So we have, well, let me see, about 8 years ago I decided that I needed to get our work out of the lab into the world. And we do it in 2 ways. So we put together an affiliation of partners for a network of city science labs. And we now have labs in Shanghai, Taipei, Ho Chi Minh City, Toronto, Guadalajara, Hamburg, Germany, Andorra. And we just signed an agreement last week for Chile. And we have 2 more that we hope to sign in the next few months, one in Israel and one in Spain, in San Sebastian. So we're looking for cities who can be part of our City Science Network, and then that gives them access to all of the tools, all of the ideas. We share. We have a City Science Summit in 2 weeks, October 27th and 28th, where all our partners come together. We are presenting a design for a new district in Kharkiv in Ukraine that we're developing with Norman Foster, who's one of the great architects of our era. And so Norman and I will be presenting that. So Kharkiv is like an honorary member of our network now. So I would love to have discussions with how cities in Turkey could be part of the network. The second way we do it is we launch companies. So we have now 5 startups that have come out of the lab, and we commercialize the best ideas, so then in a commercial way we can get it out into the lives of people.
Yeah, this was the question that Orhan Bey asked. If you would like to launch your own company or work with others, they were asking me a question about my technology. So I think your example is an amazing example. They had 5 companies out of their lab, and at the same time they work with other cities around the world and implement their projects in other cities, which is really, this is show how the impact is, right? It's not only on journal papers, on patents, it's like in real life that you work on real people.
Yeah, we do that. I mean, we of course the graduate students particularly need to write the papers.
Yes.
And so we do that. We write and we get in the journals. That's not as important to me personally as our network of cities and launching companies, because you know how it is.
Yeah.
You know, 30, 50, 100 people read your paper, right?
Right, exactly.
You know, but you can get the work out into the lives of thousands or more people in other ways.
And I think your work is extremely direct when it comes to the real life. You're really touching the people's life. Like
We try to.
Yeah, right. You're compared to mine, it's like even like more collective. You work with cars, bicycles, people, companies, governments, local policies. Like it's like extremely dimensional, multi-dimensional.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but at the same time, I also feel like having the attention coming from the people like this is also shows the value of the impact of your work, and at the same time, how the future will look brighter than now, because we really need it now in the 21st century.
And Turkey for me is an exciting place because it's a bridge between the East and the West, and we're now moving into cities in the East, like I mentioned Israel, but we have some other Middle Eastern cities. We're talking with Cairo. We're trying to put a project together, and Dubai, a few other places, and then we're working in Europe. Turkey's right in between aspects of both cultures, so that for me is really exciting.
O Türkiye ile
Can, do
çalışmaktan
you
çok
also
büyük
have
keyif
any
alıyoruz.
study with the refugees, like
Aynı
Syrian?
zamanda göçmenlerle çalışmalarımız,
Yeah.
bunlarla ilgili bir
We did a project in Hamburg
Hamburg'da bir
some years
proje
ago.
yaptık.
I think it was just playing on this monitor here a minute ago, in May while we're talking. So we were working in Hamburg with the mayor there, Olaf Scholz,
Orada belediye başkanlarıyla
who's
çalışıyoruz.
now Chancellor of Germany, because we didn't know that at the time. So, in fact, that was our first city science partner.
Ve bizim
And
bizim ilk
so
ortağımızdı
we
bu
started
proje.
working with the mayor
Belediye başkanıyla
for a
çalışmaya
new district that
başladığımızda
would
yeni bir
house
bölgede
the 2024 Olympics.
2020
And then the mayor lost the referendum for the Olympics
belediye başkanı
as they were experiencing this influx of refugees from the war in Syria. They were looking at 80,000 refugees just into that one city, Hamburg. And the challenge was finding sites to build the housing for the refugees, and it was very controversial because there's a lot of opposition for that, refugee housing in the community. So we built a version of our Cityscope tables. We did workshops with people in the community. The mayor said every district, rich and poor, has to share equally. Even assimilation, no ghettos are created, and the community has to decide, not the mayor.
Wow.
And so people would come in and they'd move the little housing pieces around, they're optically tagged, they get feedback as to access to jobs and mass transit and shopping and schools. And through these workshops, the communities in their own district decided where to build the housing, and it was a very successful
So the
project.
science ruled the democratic action.
Yes.
Wow.
And and the interesting thing is it disempowered all the angry people that wanted to
Oh
disrupt.
wow, this is so
And it
perfect.
empowered all the people that wanted to solve the problem.
Oh, so you work with local people to do so.
Yeah, well, we had facilitators that ran the workshops, but we created the platform.
Oh, I didn't know this part.
Yeah, yeah.
But has it become an integral part of how you do business in other parts
I'm
of
sorry?
your? Has it become an integral part of how you do business in other collaborations?
That is, yeah, we built these all in the world. This is from Andorra, this table, although it's not running, I see now.
Tabii ki
But,
bu çalışmalarımızda göreceğiniz gibi.
That's a big part of what we'll do in Chile.
Burada Şile'de özellikle
Chile,
yapmaya
was
çalışıyoruz. Entegrasyonla ilgili.
was under Pinochet. It was an authoritarian government. Now it's swung to become much more progressive, and they want to bring the ideas that I was just discussing earlier to cities in Chile, and particularly create much more affordable, accessible housing near where people work and all of the amenities. So we plan to have a version of that process that I described in Hamburg in Chile in the coming months.
So it's an inclusive process for inclusive cities.
Yeah,
Yani bu
Great summary.
Yeah.
yeah, that's great.
Ken, thank you so very
Sure,
much. This was
sure.
really helpful and
My
insightful.
pleasure.
I'm sure they all enjoyed. I think they know now more why I admire you. Thank you so much. I know today is holiday, but
No, it's
you
fine.
came
That's
for this
great.
trip. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
bizi onu
I'll
you.
pay it with an Adana kebab.
Okay.
Maybe in Turkey.
In Turkey, in Istanbul. You know,
In
I was
Istanbul.
born in Istanbul.
birlikte ben
Yeah.
İstanbul'da
We'll go to Istanbul together, and then
birlikte
I'd love
maybe a
that.
new era will start with the
Yeah.
help of you. I think the entire Turkish community will be very thankful.
Yeah. I spent a whole week in Istanbul, and it was with my wife. I gave a talk, and we had some meetings, and then we stayed over a few days and just were tourists.
Tabii turist
Yeah,
olarak
it was beautiful.
ve çok güzel bir şehir İstanbul.
Thank you again.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for
We
coming.
really appreciate it.
Where are you off to now?
Now we go to the lunch, and after that we meet with Bob Langer,
Oh, good.
and then Dr. Bilge Yıldız from nuclear energy, and
Yes.
then after that MIT Nano,
Wow.
then Harvard 2 labs, Mehmet Toner, Sengita Bahçıyan's PhD
Oh, yeah.
advisor,
Yeah,
then Gökhan Hotamışlıgil, who
Yeah.
studies diabetes, and
Wow.
then the dinner.
Busy day.
Very easy,
Wow.
very impactful. Yes.
Well, great. Thank you for thinking of us.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Bizi düşündüğünüz için teşekkürler.
Okay.
Hoş geldiniz tekrar.
Let's
Okay.
go.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.